Yo, what is up, guys? XRP's at $1.09 right now in CoinMarketCap. Our first tweet comes from the Crypto Square Clarity Act update. The release of the final XRP and Crypto Clarity Act text has been delayed until tomorrow morning. The document is now expected to be officially published on Friday, July 17, after the final formatting process is completed. The wait continues. Our next tweet comes from Mr. Poole. New XRP prediction. Jake Claver just dropped a wild scenario. If adoption, regulation, and liquidity flood the market, XRP could aim for 1500 to 2500 by 2026. Sounds crazy until it isn't. Watch close. Let's watch this video.
Last one, last but not least, end of 2026, XRP price prediction.
Oh boy, I rapid fired the rest of them, so might as well. All of these are optimistic, okay? These are all optimistic, based on a lot of liquidity moving into crypto. We're getting regulation, we're getting adoption, all those things. So if none of that happens, these prices are null and void. But XRP, I think 4 digits in 2026. $1,500, $2,000.
Smash that subscribe button and hit that like button if you believe XRP will reach $3 again this year. Our next tweet comes from the Crypto Square. Closer than ever, President Trump could sign the Clarity Act next week. If that happens, it could mark the beginning of a new era for XRP and crypto in the United States. Our next tweet comes from Bank XRP. DTCC just said the quiet part out loud. Their tokenization service is connecting to Stellar, and they're positioning themselves as the bridge across multiple blockchains. Shared market infrastructure is coming, silo chains are dying, XLM, XRP. Let's watch this video.
So I think what's interesting about the DTCC's approach is we are looking at this as an ecosystem. The collateral app chain we view it as shared market infrastructure. And so the questions that we often get asked is like, which blockchain should I be thinking about using? Should I use this? Should I use that? And our view is that DTCC's role is to help deal with some of that complexity. So to be able to tokenize your assets onto multiple blockchains, to be able to deploy them across multiple use cases, depending on where your counterparty or use case is, we think that's a role that we can play. And it's a super relevant point because on the DTC tokenization service side, we recently announced yesterday, we're building out connectivity to another blockchain being Stellar. And so I think that is really compelling for firms because I think up until recently, in the majority of cases, you really have had a situation where they are relatively siloed use cases.
Our next tweet comes from Smoke DQG. Ripple has the most interest/adoption from central banks and other large financial entities. Documented. Our next tweet comes from the Crypto Square. Common sense wins. Senator Cynthia Lummis says digital asset regulation isn't about politics. It's about choosing between a functional market or another decade of uncertainty for XRP and crypto. The time for clarity is now. Our next tweet comes from Crypto Barbie. DTCC filed a patent outlining a framework for tokenizing liquidity across asset classes, including digital assets like XRP and XLM. Our next tweet comes from Crypto Barbie. Massive news. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink is highly bullish on the crypto market over the next 12 months. Rumors are that BlackRock will tokenize assets on the XRP ledger and launch an XRP ETF as soon as clarity gets signed. Let's watch this video.
I was always worried about the leverage in Bitcoin and crypto. There was too much leveraged players in it. That's why we had the washout, and I think there's more stability at these levels here. But no, we don't see that much implicit leverage. For the scale of the capital markets today, the leverage is not as large. I mean, that doesn't mean there's not pockets. But no, as I said in my prepared remarks this morning, I'm very bullish on the markets over the next 12 months. I think the technological revolution is going to power better margins for more companies. I mean, think about BlackRock. We've raised our margins increased by 260 basis points over the last 12 months. A lot of it is using more and more.
Our next tweet comes from Bitcoin Magazine. Just in, Congressman French Hill on the Clarity Act. We need this bill, we need market structure, and I believe the banks will be extremely competitive in this industry. Let's watch this video.
The bill will be good for the banks. JP Morgan, Citi, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, all the banks reportedly planning a new tokenized deposit system of their own to address crypto concerns. How do you see this?
Yeah, I've watched this over the last few months, Maria, of Brian Armstrong versus editorial comments from the big banks.
Yeah.
And I have to say thank you to Tim Scott and John Bozeman and the other senators that have worked to try to find a landing spot on this debate. Senators Tillis and Alsobrooks have worked greatly. In the House, we said that stablecoins would not pay interest. And that's still my position. It's a payment token. And I think the sales practices around a non-bank or bank issuer of a stablecoin should be handled in the regulatory process to implement Genius by the Treasury Department. This statutory language, which Tim Scott found a good compromise for in the Clarity markup, is a good starting spot that I think you can find consensus from by both the banks and the crypto exchanges, and I hope they do, because we need this bill. We need market structure, and I believe the banks, as you just noted, will be extremely competitive in this industry. I just don't have any doubt about that, because of the technology to tokenize deposits allows one to not even depend on a dollar-backed stablecoin here in a U.S. type application.
And the banks talked about tokenizing just this week, and they are launching this network that will launch next year, operated under a company called the Clearinghouse. It allows tokenized deposits to move immediately across blockchain technology with 24/7 settlements. But, Mr. Chairman, what I think Jamie is upset about is he says that even though the language says that the crypto companies will not be able to pay rewards, there are some times, if you're a member of a certain program, that they will be able to pay the reward. So do you see that changing, or the way that the Clarity Act language is today is that will go forward regardless of whether the banks want to fight it or not?
Well, I think the banks are still looking for additional changes to that compromise Tillis-Alsobrooks language before the bill goes to the Senate floor. And we'll just have to work and see how it can be made better there. I know people on both sides of the aisle are committed to finding a landing spot, but I also think that the regulatory process through the Treasury is a way to handle sales practice concerns as well between a bank issuer and a non-bank issuer. And finally, I'd say, look, the banks will be very competitive in this industry if consumers and businesses demand the use of settlement, a payment settlement internationally or domestically through a blockchain on a 7-day, 24-hour-a-day basis. Our banking system is fully prepared to do that, and these recent announcements indicate that.
Now, here's what the president of ICBA said. Our analysis shows that Congress must extend the prohibition on payments of yield and interest on payment stablecoin holdings to crypto exchanges, affiliates, and other intermediaries. The role community banks serve is too important to risk. So you've talked about the community banks in the past with me as well. They're getting involved here and backing up the major banks' position on this as well.
That's right, but I've spoken to many community bank groups, and look, let me restate my position. I don't believe payment stablecoin tokens should pay yield. That's my position. But I also think that banks will, through their core processor, through their fintech partnerships, through their upstream correspondent banks, will be able to meet any demand for a blockchain-based tokenized payment that is far faster and more competitive with the ability of a dollar-backed stablecoin. So I really think the banks will end up being very competitive here. And banks know how to as you well know, organize compensating balances to pay for services and things of that nature.
That's
They're
right.
experts at packaging pricing. So I really believe this is a competitive market, and the big picture here is that we get a market structure bill that allows America to lead the world and innovate in blockchain technology and financial services.
Our next tweet comes from Smoke DQG. DTCC/ISDA webinar reveals key details behind the 2026 tokenization rollout plans. Let's watch this video.
Great. And then you mentioned this is like there's a pilot phase going on, right? So there's a timing angle to this. Perhaps you could say a bit about what you see as being the phasing of this project.
Yeah, so we're expecting to have our first launch in early Q3, and that first launch will be limited in scale, both in terms of numbers of assets and numbers of participants. It will be a live pilot, and it will be, we're doing it in a way that we make sure that everything happens appropriately and in a controlled way. From there, our participants will have more access to our testing environments throughout the summer. And then we're expecting a phased rollout from into the fall, so October, and then beyond towards the end of the year. And through that phase rollout, we will increase the amount of assets that will be available. So on day one, it will be a very narrow set of assets just to verify that the process works in production. And then we will add the numbers of assets, meaning that we won't go from 0 to 1,000. We'll probably go from 0 to 20 and 100 and then beyond. And again, really just to maintain that control framework to make sure that everything's working properly, so the volume can be scaled in a way that's controlled, and that our members have, and the market has the opportunity to both see how it works, see how things interact, develop their frameworks and structures, because we really are doing this in parallel. What we're building and the market is building, again, wallets and policies and procedures and all those kind of things that need to be done. So it will happen over time, gradually throughout the, I would say, the end of Q3 into towards the end of the year, and then from 2027 we really expect to ramp up.
Very exciting. That's great.
Real quick, if this helped, press the like button. It tells YouTube to show this to people who want the truth, not hype. And press the subscribe button if you're done being sold the moon. I've already got your next one right here. Go.